Hello and welcome back once again to Rage Gaming and a new things you didn't know in Baldurs Gate 3 episode. Today I've got a funny one, a couple crazy ones, and one to do with the origins of the voice actors themselves. As always, thanks to everyone who gets involved with the series. Some of these weeks, some of these episodes, it'd be impossible without your help. But with that said, let's begin. So, to kick things off, just as I mentioned, we have some crazy ones. And these come from one person in the comments of last time, our first and second thing. Both things are via the commenter Nihil0. I hope I pronounced that right. Nihil followed up on our look at the crazy potency of GLUT, that mushroom character you find down in the Underdark. GLUT can actually join you as a temporary party member if you go with his story option, which is kind of considered more of a darker route. Anyway, we looked at GLUT's insanely strong power that is the ability to revive monsters and use them as temporary party members. It's so strong you could technically force the spider matriarch, the one under the blighted village, down into the Underdark to GLUT, who can then revive her as a literal boss you can use in your party for a while. Awesome in itself, but a little busted if you use it not on massive monsters like minotaurs or huge spiders or whatever, but it's actually way stronger if you use it on a child. Yes, a child. And as shown in this little video by Nihil, you can use GLUT to raise a child such as Arabella here. As it turns out, since the devs, I guess, didn't expect us to do this or predict this could happen, which is fair enough, children cannot participate in the turn-based combat of the game, meaning they can attack endlessly when revived in this way. You could kill anything and everything before it ever gets a turn. So that's a little crazy, but with an unharmed child, there's not much damage it can do. Fortunately, you can arm the child. As explained by Nihil, you do similar to what you do to steal from, say, a summon, like you do that in the past. That was basically removed in a patch, but it seems you could still do this with this weird revive summon. You open your own inventory, you click on the portrait of the summon, in this case Arabella, and open their inventory so that you can give them a weapon. Anyway, you can now use your completely out of turn-based combat infinite attacking child that you've just armed to take on any challenge you might want. This is a little crazy and I can't believe it's a thing. There's no way I would have found this without Nihil both explaining it in the comments and posting videos to look at. So massive props for this. This is insane. Quite literally game breaking as long as you can use GLUT as long as possible. Now, he's meant to only really be in the Underdark or Act 1, I guess. But that brings us to our next thing, which is a follow-up to exactly that. We can get GLUT to leave Act 1, despite the game obviously wanting to limit him to this section since he's a little nuts. This was again explained in the comments of last time by Nihil, and again with a quick video to showcase that trick. So Nihil, thank you, and please guys go check out the channel, drop a like on these videos. It's been incredible to look at. So to do this, you need to do certain things. Firstly, you need to not have actually had the Dream Visitor reveal scene during Act 1. That's the one where you find out the artifact is the thing keeping you from turning into a flayer. I guess you can avoid that cinematic by avoiding certain sections of Act 1 in the wilderness. It always happened to me on characters whenever I reach the goblin camp, but I'm pretty sure there'll be more places you can trigger it. Ultimately, doing whatever you need to avoid triggering that cinematic, you can then intentionally trigger it to bypass this restriction on GLUT, which is very strange, but there you go. There's of course multiple ways to leave Act 1, but the one shown here is going to the mountain pass. Nihil tells us that you'll need to use your revived monster or character of choice to leave Act 1. In that case, we're using the revived Arabella here, and it needs to be done while another main character is near, so you can trigger the cutscene we just mentioned. Now for some reason, doing that will send GLUT to camp. I guess that's because he's not meant to be part of the cutscene with all the origin characters. Anyway, after a long rest in camp, you can now leave the camp if you do one hilarious thing. Use improvised weapon on Arabella. Yes, you've weaponized the child in another way, you monster. For some reason, GLUT will just follow you to either the mountain pass or the ruined battlefield for Act 2. And that is how you get him there. Absolutely incredible finds, Nihil. These are insane. The fact that you can even get this whole turnless combat using a child situation, but then bypass the restriction to have it only in Act 1? Phenomenal. Next up, just a fun one. Did you know there's actually a usable katana in this game? Yeah, for whatever reason, the popular weapon type is essentially not represented in Baldurs Gate 3. However, there is one you can get your hands on and use if you really want to. It's found here at this house near the Baldurs Gate waypoint with a normal looking entrance. Only there's a secret key in the cupboard right next to the doorway. And then a trapdoor we can break our way into, which does require a 20 roll to break into. Down below, you have another normal looking basement, except there's this special wall that comes apart in this alcove. Now, you got Got to be careful in the next room because it's heavily trapped in every section, so having high perception and some disarming may be needed. The room is filled with interesting stuff, chests and a variety of weapons, but most importantly on the south side is a literal katana, and it's one that's actually usable and is classed as a longsword in game. It's an uncommon item, which is funny because if this is truly the only usable katana in the game, uncommon is maybe a bit unfair, but whatever. It's green quality, plus one enchanted weapon that clearly our character doesn't know how to hold properly, though to be fair there's not like a sheath for it. But this came up in the comments recently and it had a variety of people talking about how actually there's multiple in the game. Technically, there's one at the circus when you first enter Act 3. The Jinn here has a lot of things on display behind him. He's not necessarily the kindest or honest guy though, and you can tell that from when you look at the weapon display, you find another katana, so not rare after all. Only when you try to interact with it, or the other items here, you quickly realize it's not real at all. It's apparently made of paper, held together by glue and optimism. Just one touch and it'll break. So those are the known katanas of Baldur's Gate. Incredibly rare, and only one of them's even a real weapon, not necessarily even worth using. Still, I had no clue there were even any in the game, so a fun thing to look at. Alright, so moving on to the next thing, a pretty neat one. Throughout Act 3, you're harassed by Orin, right? She takes on the appearance of different characters to mess with you, try to get you to confess or say weird stuff. Basically, she's toying with you and doing horrible things to people along the way. At some points, she'll show up in your camp, leaving you with, say, a lovely letter and this delightful artwork showing a recent kill. Wonderful. But it all comes to a head when she chooses to kidnap one of your main companions, which happened to me with Lae'zel, which was terrible at the time because I was trying to make a video about the legendary weapons of the game, and I'd given the silver sword to Lae'zel, and she'd been taken from me. It was terrible, so I had to change all my focus to go save her so I could make the video. It's a nightmare. Anyway, it turns out there's something that can happen that I didn't expect. She can choose not to kidnap any companions, but instead kidnap someone else. There's this little girl Yenna who can come to your camp. You meet her at your arrival in Act 3 in Rivington. She just wants help finding her lost mother, which, you know, through conversations with the cat, you can find out that she's essentially dead. But if you're nice to her, she'll show up in the camp, and the cute cat Grub will also show up. Unfortunately, Orin can target these too. So instead of losing a companion for a bit, you lose the cat and the child. If you start heading into the sewers to make your way to the Baal Temple, you can actually bump into an escaping Yenna. She obviously begs your help. Apparently Orin has made her eat the cat and said that she's going to chase Yenna, and then when she catches her, she's going to eat Yenna. Pretty horrible, this poor child. Except that's not the child. It's again Orin, because she can also take the form of children, not just adults. Now, when you actually make it to the Baal Temple, you'll find whoever's been kidnapped, in this case, Yenna, and weirdly, there's a dialogue option to suggest, hey, why don't you do it? Stop, you know, you're just bluffing. Which then immediately Orin does kill Yenna because you said that, which somehow I still didn't expect to happen in Baldur's Gate. But yeah, it does seem like this poor child's entire existence is basically to be a failsafe for, you know, Orin to have another kidnap option in your camp. It's pretty unfortunate. Finally, lastly, just a fun look at the recent event held by Popverse at the recent Comic-Con. Baldur's Gate had its own special show for it, featuring a lot of the voice actors for the origin characters and of course the narrator for the whole game. It looked really cool. I saw lots of clips of silly jokes and fun, a big massive crowd, there's a Q&A section and more. And I'd love to watch the whole thing, but unfortunately the stream footage was locked behind a paywall. You have to subscribe to that website to see it. So all we really have is a bunch of different clips shared by the people who paid for it. A big part of the event was actually discussing how the actors got the roles for the characters. For example, there's this great one with the voice actor for Gale, Tim Downey. I'd love to just play the clip, but I don't think it's safe for me to do that since it's, you know, a paid wall thing. But he described it as a very confusing thing. In classic Tim fashion, he starts by saying it was a Wednesday, like that matters, and that he'd had his tea, which is very vital, obviously. And he had this strange job offer on the phone, a role where he needs to do motion capture, stand very specifically, and the brief for the character he's going to play is apparently Henry Cavill, but from the Tudors. They can't tell him who he's playing, what the game's even called, or what it's about, or anything really. But he went for it anyway, and went in very blind, obviously. It wasn't until the game really started to release that he realized what he'd done and what a big thing it was. All of these stories for the origins of who got their roles was quite interesting to listen to, but unfortunately as they came to Will's voice actor, Theo Solomon, they basically skipped over him for time reasons. There's quite an uproar on Twitter about this coming to his defense. Seemingly Theo has been skipped over in different events and whatnot and just hasn't had the kind of spotlight that others have had. And he found the response and this uproar about it very late because he doesn't use social media. Imagine that. Anyway, he was very chill about it, explained in his own video video, his origin, how he got the role, you know, just to appease the drama of it. I'd recommend you check out the full panel if you can. It looked really fun, but all the clips I saw were posted on the Twitter account on Akita, so you could check that out instead. But there you have it. That's our newest episode complete. Some real game-breaking stuff alongside some fun stuff today. As always, if you guys have anything you'd like to talk about, things you think most don't know, or follow on from anything we've talked about today or recently, then let us know in the comments. We might just be able to talk about it. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.